Hello, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the American Ultras Talk. Here we are, Braden and I. But before we start this video, which we'll be talking about the depth in the center back position, we want to thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts for helping us reach the 500 subscribers mark. It may seem like a very little for some people, but for us, it's absolutely huge. We are so happy. We want to thank each and every single one of you. But straight to the point, today we'll be bringing to you guys the series, which I know we're going by slowly. I think we're about to finish this in 2026, but it's the depth chart, where we talk about the best players, 10 best players in our opinion, for a certain position in the USMNT. We know it's the best generation we ever had, and now we already did the goalkeepers, the fullbacks, time for the center backs, which some may say it's one of our weakest positions now, Braden. From your top 10, who's the first player that got to mention?
I think it is without a doubt our weakest position. But like you said, before we start, we just have to reemphasize thank you so much to everyone who's tuned into the channel. It's such a big goal for us, and it's just the beginning. We're going to keep putting out content for you guys and try to hit more milestones. But this is a big one. It means a lot, especially to hit it by the end of the month, right before the end of February. It's big. So thanks again to all the viewers, all the subscribers. Even if you're not subscribed, we really appreciate everyone watching the channel. But to start this video off at number 10, I'm going to pick a dual national who hasn't committed yet. It's going to be Brian Ako, the 20-year-old center back, the Swiss dual national from the Salzburg system. I've been paying attention to the Salzburg system for a while. I really rate their academy and how they develop players. It's not even just their own players. They scout people and sign them from all over the world when they're really young and just do an excellent job developing. I mean, we've seen so many big names come from the Salzburg academies: Sadio Mane, Erling Haaland, Karim Adeyemi, just a few of them. But the center back, Brian Ako, I think he has a lot of potential. He's had some injury problems. It was basically between him and another injury-prone dual national for me, Kick Yuri. Here, I think Yuri's at a higher level right now, but Ako's a couple years younger. He has a lot more potential for me, and I think he has a better chance of hitting those heights. So I decided to put him here, reward him at number 10.
Yeah, it's definitely a good shout. He just came back from injury, if I'm not mistaken, as you said, and he's doing really well. I think that just the fact that he's at Salzburg, it's a good sign. It's so nice when we get to see American players develop in European academies. Moving on to my 10th place. This one's a little bit out of respect, really, for the career he's had. I'll be honest. I think 10th is very fair. Some people have him a little bit higher. He has a feud with our manager, Greg Berhalter. I included John Brooks here. He is a player that was really important for us for some time. I'll always have some nostalgia for that going to 2014 World Cup. It's a moment I'll never forget. I was really happy. That whole campaign was a lot nicer now looking back than it really was at the time. So I included him here. He's still at a high level at Hoffenheim. Well, he's still at a high level, not playing at a high level, but he's still there in the top 5 league. I think that it's time for him to sincerely just come back to MLS, finish his career here. He's looking really slow. Doesn't really start that many games. The club's not really in the best run of form, but I think that if there was a Camp Cupcake next year and he was in MLS, I'll definitely include him for the experience that he has. He's one of the few players, just like Edlin, that had World Cup experience prior to this World Cup that just passed by. So I'll include him here out of respect, because I do think that he's probably amongst really close to that area of the 10th best center back we have available. Moving on a little bit up the table, who you got in 9th, Braden?
9th, it's going to be probably one of the most unpopular center backs in our pool right now, due to his decision to throw away all ambitions for his career and stay in MLS, sign for the Supporters Shield champions, FC Cincinnati. Of course, it's Miles Robinson, the Camp Cupcake defender, and that's really what he is now. He should just be a Camp Cupcake defender. The fact that he still gets looks in the A-team and still expects to get looks in the A-team after re-signing with an MLS team is just, I don't know what he's thinking. Honestly, I don't know what Greg's thinking when he calls him up. We have so many better center backs. He is still good enough to make this list, don't get me wrong. He's shown in MLS, especially before his injury, that he was playing at a very high level. I think he hasn't exactly been the same since that injury that caused him to miss the World Cup, and I think that was honestly a big detriment to his career, because I don't know if he's ever going to get to play at a World Cup, because by 2026, let's be honest, we should be doing a lot better than him. There's a big chance that he missed out on, and it sucks for him, but honestly, his chance is gone now. He could have had a chance if he had tried to move to Europe and challenge himself, but he decided to stay content, make some money, keep his family happy, and I respect that, but you're nowhere near the USMNT for now and for the future.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest backwards move I've seen for an A-teamer in such a long time. And he could have believed in himself a little bit more and tried to cut it in Europe. Sure, he was going to get less money, but he could eventually get a better move if he banked on himself. But moving on to another Camp Cupcake defender. At one time, he was such a promising player. I included Matt Miazga here. I don't think that he's a horrible center back. I know some people think that he's absolutely atrocious. I included him here. I think that he's quite decent for some Camp Cupcakes. And quite frankly, we were so low at center backs. I held myself from including other dual nationals, and I just thought Miazga, although not a really good defender, in my opinion, still one of the best ones in MLS. And maybe that speaks volumes about the league. I think that he deserves to be in ninth place, but really sad. Definitely underwhelming there. Moving on a little bit upwards on the table, I'm sure you probably have someone a little bit more exciting, Braden. Who is it?
At the very least, Miazga still has that iconic moment with Diego Lainez that we'll never forget. He's a USMNT cult hero for that moment, but I never want to see him back with the national team again. Moving on to number 8, and unfortunately it's not an exciting player because it's someone you already mentioned at 10th. It's going to be John Brooks. I rate him a little bit higher. I think the fact that he is still in the Bundesliga after all these years says a lot. Just I think more about his character. I still don't think he's a good center back, like you said. I think he's a bit past it. He's been in and out of the lineup for Hoffenheim, a very struggling Hoffenheim team this season. Their manager's in danger of being sacked, the American Pellegrino Matarazzo. And yeah, I think Brooks, like I said, is past his best. And I see a lot of debates between USMNT fans on whether if Greg wasn't the manager, should John Brooks be in the lineup? I don't think so. I think it's time to move on from him. And maybe, honestly, Greg's feud with him is a blessing in disguise because it opens up more opportunities for some younger guys that have futures with the USMNT and can maybe be better than John Brooks ever was. Who knows?
Yeah, and talking about young guys, this is the first young one I'm going to include. We've mentioned him here a few times. I put Maximilian Dietz over there. In my opinion, he's going to be a Bundesliga center back next year, and I rate him higher than Brooks at this moment. Playing a lot of games for Gerger Forth, where he is partnering with the legend, as you said in previous videos, Julian Green, and they are in the race for a spot in the Bundesliga. We saw the ascendance of Maloney last year, coming from the second Bundesliga. Maybe it will happen with Dietz. He goes under the radar quite a lot, having a really good season. Really fast defender as well. Did a really good match as well in preseason against Liverpool, which I don't know if a lot of people watched, but he looked really good in that game. And I think that just for the age, at 21 years old, Olympic eligible, going to play in the Olympics, I think it's going to be really important for him, for us to keep an eye on him. And I have him in 8th place. I think it's fair, and hopefully he'll be climbing up in the future. Moving on, Braden, who you got next in the list?
Coming in at number 7, I'm going for another MLS guy, and maybe having him ahead of Miles Robinson is controversial to some people, but I'm going to go for the one who actually did make the World Cup roster. Not Aaron Long, don't worry. It's going to be Walker Zimmerman. I've come to like Walker Zimmerman a lot more. Honestly, when he gave up that penalty to Wales and Gareth Bale equalized, I really didn't like him. I didn't understand why he was there. But looking back more at some of the videos that the USMNT has put out, I don't remember what the series is called, but like the Behind the Crest, that's what it is. I think Walker Zimmerman's a very important player to the locker room. He's very well liked, and we saw that even when he wasn't with the national team. When we played against, I believe it was Ghana in Nashville, he was at the game, and all the players came over after the game to say hi to him and just talk it up, catch up with him. I think he's a very important player. All the players seem to like him. He's a big figure in the locker room. So for that reason, I'm going to have him here at number 7. And I think he's a pretty good center back as well, especially for MLS level. I think he's one of, if not the best center backs in MLS. Is he European quality? Maybe not. But honestly, as a locker room presence, I think he's a very important player for the national team, just from that aspect. So he gets number 7 for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I also have him up next and as my pick, because I agree with you. Exactly the same words as I was going to say. And people, we can look at that Wales game and highlight how he did cost us. But against Iran, when he came on, he was immense, really. He won, I think, 4 aerial duels. and he's a good. If we're gonna have Camp Cupcake going forward, this is the exact type of player I want. Someone that's really likable, a good leader, knows that he's likely not going to be in contention for an A-team spot, but accepts it, and it's a good guy, not going to cause any turmoils. And he's very decent. I feel like for some CONCACAF games, if the other guys that are a little bit better than him are injured, I wouldn't be too worried with Walker playing there. So that's who I had. Now, who you got next, Braden?
Number 6, just outside of the top 5, I'm going for another player who you mentioned already. I rate him maybe a little higher. Maximilian Dietz, we've mentioned it so many times. I think it speaks volumes for our lack of depth in general that Max Dietz is the only Olympic eligible player on either of our lists. I guess I had Brian Ako, but he's not going to commit to the US before the Olympics, so I'm just not going to count him there. The fact that our pool is so weak there is a cause for concern. Who knows? Maybe some of these guys we have a little bit lower down our list will be at the Olympics as overage players. It'd be a good opportunity for them. But like you said about Maximilian Dietz, he should be in the Bundesliga next season with or without Greuther Fürth. I think if they don't get promoted, I think a Bundesliga club will snap him up. Maybe one of the newly promoted teams, like a St. Pauli, like a Holstein Kiel potentially, maybe one of the teams that's struggling, barely missing out on relegation or really surviving. I think he has elite potential, and he kind of burst onto the scene this season. Not a lot of people knew about him before this year, but the fact that USSF even managed to notice that he existed, props to them for that. I think he's already the best center back for our Olympic team. He's going to be huge in that tournament, and I just expect bigger and better things from him moving forward.
Yeah, I was going to say that props to them. It's the type of player I wouldn't expect them to notice. Moving on to the next one, you already mentioned him. I have him a little bit higher because I'm just so gutted that he chose to stay in the league. I have Miles Robinson up here because at one time, I don't know if it was the injury, if it was a mentality thing, I really thought he was such a good center back. And I think he is a good center back. But last season, I keep going back to some of the goals they conceded at Atlanta. And I think that people can pinpoint to Guzan, who is definitely past it. But if you look at Miles' performances as well, go watch him against Inter Miami. Horrible, shocking defending, in my opinion. And I feel like there's a reason why he didn't really trust himself to go to Europe, is just because maybe the mind's not there anymore. He settled with the fact that perhaps the World Cup was such a huge disappointment. And we've seen in the past lots of players when they don't play and kind of feel like that was their peak chance, they kind of falter. Samir Nasri for France, that happened to him and the career went spiraling down. I feel like that's what happened with Miles. Not spiraling down, but spiraling sideways, definitely. Choosing to stay in MLS. I can't rank him any higher. And at one point, I did have him a lot higher, and I thought he was going to be the future. It's quite sad. Now, moving on, approaching the top 5, the best players that are near a call-up worthy for you, Braden. Who are they?
Coming in at number 5, which would be the first player left off the roster, because for a 23-man roster, we should only bring 4 center backs. And I'm going to pick a player who's usually with the A-team, actually. It's going to be Cameron Carter-Vickers, playing out for Celtic in Scotland. And as we're recording this, the game today, he came back from injury, scored a goal. It was nice to see. But they were also up 6-0 at halftime against a team that's in the top half of the table. It just shows the levels in Scotland are a complete joke. I think outside of Celtic and Rangers, there's no disputing the fact that it is way worse of a league than MLS. So if we want to get on Miles Robinson for staying in MLS, we should probably be getting on CCV for signing a contract extension until 2029 with Celtic. Now, maybe that just means he's protected more so they can get a bigger fee when they do sell him. Those Premier League clubs interested. I still have bad flashbacks from him when he was at Tottenham, so I don't know if I want to see him in the Prem necessarily, but he does need to make a move ASAP if he wants to be in contention for the top spots or potentially taking a starting spot, because one of our starters right now is getting up there in age and there's going to be a spot available. CCV is one of the contenders, but for now, just due to the competition level he faces week in, week out, he's going to be a number 5 for me.
I completely agree. I mean, Dundee is like 7th in the table or something, and they get destroyed like that. It's ridiculous, honestly. I agree with you. I have them in the same spot. We never tell guys our list to each other, so it's a genuine reaction when we're on the video, and I actually have them in 5th as well. Honestly, same reasoning as well, and I think that I do hope, I'm holding onto the hope that renewal was just so they can get a bigger fee for him. And he can get a sweet, nice little contract in his last months here for Celtic. But if he doesn't move next summer, I sincerely have to drop him here because the guy's doing the same thing as Miles, really settling for what's comfortable, and it's definitely proven he's way too good to stay in the Scottish Premiership. And I think that I could score a goal there if I was playing today for Celtic. And I think I'm a bad player if I was going to play at pro level, but I'm pretty sure I could have gotten one. Now moving on to the first player that you would call up as a depth player for the main squad, Braden. Who is it?
Yeah, the first one is going to be someone who has had a lack of call-ups recently, and I'm not really sure why, because I think he'd be a very important player for the national team. It's going to be Austin Trusty playing in the Premier League for Sheffield United, if you can call it that. I don't know if they're really playing so much as just getting battered every week. It's a bit of an unfortunate situation this year for him, and honestly, if it weren't for that, I'd probably have him a spot or two higher. But I think he's a really important profile for the national team. The fact that he's a left-footed and left-sided center back to replace Tim Ream down the line, I think he's the player to step into that spot. And honestly, I'm a bit concerned the fact that he hasn't been getting call-ups, because I think he's more than deserving. Players like CCV and Miles Robinson are getting the chances over him, and I really don't get it, since he is there to Tim Ream's spot. I think he needs to be kind of adjusted into the national team, integrated in, get some game time, and I hope to see that in the Nations League. Maybe he'll be there, maybe he won't, maybe in Copa America, or at the very least in the Olympics. Just get some valuable experience with the national team, because I think he has a big future ahead.
Yeah, and he's a fast defender as well. We need that. It's a bit of a contrast to Ream, and he's left-footed. I think it's perfect. It's set up for him to be an A-teamer, a starter in the future. But I don't have him in fourth. I actually have Mark McKenzie, who's tearing it up in Belgium. I don't think his club is that good, honestly. I watched only one game. I'm not going to pretend I watched the Belgian league. I watched the highlights. That's it. That's the extensive of my knowledge there. But the one game I watched, I think they're not that good of a team, but McKenzie is such a good defender, so fast as well. I think that his timing of the ball sometimes can be a little suspect, but he's a really good defender. He's challenging himself in Europe. Definitely earned a move to a bigger club. I expect to see it during the summer. And I expect to see him playing in the Olympics as well. Judging by the lack of depth that we have, I would much rather have him alongside Dietz than Jalen Neal, who seems to be the next guy up for the Olympic roster. So I think that him as an overage player is going to be fine, and he has the potential to definitely challenge someone to be a starter in the long run. I think that he's earned it, really, and goes under the radar a lot. He put that meme away back in the summer, and I feel like that's still how he should be portraying himself on social media. He does go very underrated by the fan base. Moving on to your top three, Braden.
Yeah, I think we may have flip-flopped our third and fourth spots, because I'm going for Mark McKenzie in third. Him and Trusty, both former Union center backs, of course, have to rep a little bit for Philly. But yeah, like you said, we want to talk about fast center backs. I think Mark McKenzie is the fastest center back in our pool, period. And he's a very intriguing player as well, because he also plays left-sided center back, and he doesn't really have a weak foot. He plays on the left side, like I said. I think he came up as a right-footed player, but his left is really, really good. Honestly, when I watch him play, I can't tell which one of his feet is better on the ball. So that's obviously a great thing to have as a center back. The fact that he can play either side is big. He did have that one mistake in the Nations League, but come on, that was 3 years ago. We need to move on, especially since our center back depth is so bad. We need to be calling up players like Mark McKenzie, who, I'm going to keep going back to it. He's better than Miles Robinson. He's better than CCV, and he's playing at a higher level than both of them, playing arguably better for his team in a better league. He's had links to England, a top-level championship club. I remember he was linked to Leeds in January. I don't think I want any more of our players going there, but the level is there. To go to a high-level championship team or a low-level Premier League team, I think he can fit in perfectly to that level, and I think it's time to give him another chance with the national team.
Absolutely. I think that I completely agree with you. And we did flip-flop our third and fourth picks. I have Trusty there in third place. And for the same reasons as you listed, I think that he's such a good player. And if people pay attention to what he was doing in the championship last year, I think the championship is a higher level than the Scottish Premiership. So that's some reasoning on why I have him ahead of CCV. I think it's a way more challenging league. And the Sheffield move is bad right now, but I think in the long term, we've mentioned this before, he's going to be playing for one of the best teams in the championship. And he's definitely going to cement himself there. If anything, it gives him a little bit more time to acclimate on how he's going to be there. I feel like he will be at Sheffield for quite some time, and it's just fine for him to stay there. ride the ship while they're going down and get them back up. I think that he's earned it. And you're right, it is a little bit concerning how he hasn't gotten that many call-ups. Now moving on to one of the starters, the main teamers that you would field if we were playing a top nation, Braden. Who is the second one that you have there as our second best center back?
Yeah, for number two, I'm going to go for our most experienced player in the roster, period. 36-year-old Tim Ream, who has aged like a fine wine, especially last season, having a late renaissance. Obviously, Pep Guardiola, that famous quote saying that if he was 10 years younger, he'd love to have him at Man City. I think that was just being nice, honestly. I don't think he's at that level. But he is so consistent for Fulham and for the national team. He did struggle with injury a little bit this season, which is concerning for an older player. But he is back for Fulham now, putting in consistently solid, just nothing too special, but nothing too bad either. Just solid, consistent performances in the Premier League for a mid-table club. And that's a higher level than any of our other center backs are playing at right now, besides the player who I'm going to have at number one. And I think Tim Ream as well. Our team is so young in general, the national team, one of the youngest. I think we were the second youngest roster at the World Cup back in 2022, only ahead of Ecuador. So having a player like Tim Ream in there, bringing some much needed experience to the locker room is crucial as well.
Yeah, I have the same thing. Tim Ream in second place, experience. You know what you're going to get. And I feel like on the ball, he's very comfortable. He doesn't really feel the pressure when other teams are playing a high pressure. He does seem to deal with that a lot better. And I feel like that's something, especially with the goalkeepers we have, it's very important to have the distribution from the back. I'll definitely have him in second place. And I think that although his form has dipped this season, it would be impossible to keep up the form he had last year with the age that he has. And I expect him, even when he comes back to MLS and retires at St. Louis, which seems like it would be a perfect Cinderella story, he's going to be doing well until the very last day that he's a player. I think he's such a good player on the ball, off the ball, has the experience and the will, most and foremost, to succeed. So I have him there in second place. I'll have no issues with him being the starter for us. Moving on to the top spot. Is it Aaron Long, Braden?
And one other thing about Tim Ream, the fact that he has such good chemistry with our starting left back as well is a huge thing. Him and Jedi have built together a big bond for Fulham and the national team. But yeah, number one, I'm sorry to all MLS shills. It's not going to be Aaron Long at number one. I'd probably have him down towards 30. Probably, I think, is fair for him. Maybe behind some amateur players. But at number one, it's going to be, like I alluded to, Chris Richards. He just scored his first Premier League goal recently on the weekends. So happy for him. What a moment. He's finally integrated himself into that Crystal Palace side under new manager Oliver Glasner. Under that three-back system, he's going to thrive alongside Anderson and Gahey once Gahey is back from injury. He finally got his spot. He's been shifted around a lot since he signed for Palace. Some people, including myself, argued that he might need a move due to just playing out of position at right back in CDM and not really getting many minutes at his preferred position. And since he is our best center back and honestly one of our only good ones, him playing in his preferred position is crucial for the national team. And it's so nice that he's finally going to have a chance to do that under a competent manager that shouldn't be in a retirement home. Roy Hodgson, congrats on an incredible career, but your time in management is long gone. So Chris Richards is self-explanatory. He's number one. He's going to be number one for probably the next 5 to 10 years.
Same here. Can't go with anyone except for Chris Richards scoring that nice goal with the Afro helping him. That was nice to see. And you're right. Now that he's not going to be getting coached by a dinosaur and he's going to be playing in the back three, the concerns that Gahey and Anderson would be hampering his game time are gone, really. I hope that they do stick with that. And just the fact that he's getting these minutes, if they revert back to a back four, I think that he would definitely have more of a look going forward. And you never know, they could sell Gahey. It seems like it's bound to happen at some point. And I'm so happy that he's getting to play like this. I'll be honest, I did have some concerns with him earlier in that friendly against Germany, but it can really go down to the lack of game time. It was such a bad season for him, such a turmoil that he faced, but now it seems like the ship has steadied and he's onwards and upwards. I feel like Chris Richards, you're right, it's going to be the starter in that position, a lockdown starter for the next 10 years maybe. So yeah, we come to the end of this video. I'll be honest, after finishing this, I get a little bit more concerned with our depth in center back. I mean, I had guys like Miazga here, Miles, honestly Brooks, but it is what it is. We're doing this series, guys, to show really what our depth looks like. We try to bring in some players that are perhaps unknown to most of the fan base, guys that can perhaps someday emerge into the lineup. So if you watched this far, please leave a like and comment down below who would be your starters and the backups too for our call-up. And hopefully the USMNT can surprise us in the summer, or not. Maybe you think we can go and win the tournament, but we're going to be continuing this. Next up, we have central defensive midfielders, CDMs, and it's going to be a good, fun video. So please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share it with your friends. And again, thank you so much. 500. Next milestone is going to be 1,000. See you next time.